Well, we'll let more people in as they join the Zoom, of course. Thanks for coming in and joining us, everybody. Once again, welcome to Learn with Us, 5 years into Edible Schoolyard Stockton's farm field trips. And we're so glad to have you. This is going to be about an hour and a half of sharing about some of our practices and wanting to learn from you all as well. Have this be a cross-pollinative conversation. And just to give a little bit of background about Edible Schoolyard, we are a 30-year-old nonprofit based in Berkeley, California, with a program site at a public middle school in Berkeley, California, and a urban farm site in Stockton, California. And this virtual workshop is part of our virtual training series where we're planning to have about one virtual training a month. And we're so glad to have you all. We love for these events to be ones where we certainly share what's worked well for our program, and we want to have this be a space where we get to learn together. We know that everyone's coming in to these workshops with a wide range of experiences and knowledge and insight all around the experience of bringing, connecting young people, people of all ages, to the land, to food, to culture, to stories, to health. And so we're so excited for this to be a generous sharing conversation. And so thank you so much for joining us today. One thing that we love to do at the beginning of most of our virtual workshops actually is come off of mute if everyone is willing and able to. We'd love to have a collective hello in the space. It'll be a little, it's a little bit chaotic in some ways, but it's also very nice to hear as many voices as we can. So if you're willing and able to come off of mute and join us in a hello, feel free to take yourself off of mute. And on the count of three, we'll give a collective hello in whatever phrase or language feels most right for you. So one, two, three.
Hello.
Hello!
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. Thanks. Thank you all. So good to see you. And I'm so excited to pass the mic to my colleagues, Jenny Garcia and Megan Wurzbanger. So I'll thank you so much, Jenny and Megan, and so excited for our time here. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Russell. We're so happy to be talking with all of you here. Nice to hear your voices. Now I know I'm not just talking to a screen. Um, my name is Megan. I'm one of the farm educators at ESY Stockton. I am from Stockton, so I love our community. We have one of the most diverse communities in the country, actually, which I think is really, really cool. I have been with the Edible Schoolyard Project for just over a year now. And I work most closely with the teachers and educators and community groups that come out to the farm. And I help prep them for their visits and their field trips. And it's really important to me that they all have a meaningful experience when they're at our farm.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Russell. Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Garcia. I grew up here in Stockton from age 6, and my interest in food started really young as I saw a lot of health challenges from my family, and recognized that our communities were experiencing a lot of those same health challenges, but through travel and also sports and injury and living elsewhere, I recognized that not everybody in every place was experiencing these same challenges. Um, so thus my journey began. I have been with ESY for about 2.5 years now, and in my current role, I help develop curriculum for our educational programming, as well as manage our farm festivals to help support sharing our beautiful space with our communities. Let's do a next slide. Thanks, Russell. Yeah, okay, so just a little bit more to reiterate what Russell has shared a little bit about our mission at ESY as a whole. We aim to create an inspiring space for students to build skills explore the relationship to food and food systems, experience the interconnectedness of all living things. At its heart, edible education is a dynamic and joyful learning experience for every child. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Russell. I'll quickly go over just the agenda for our virtual training today. We will talk a little bit about our farm space and the land that we work on, as well as a bird's eye view of some of our programming, because we do quite a lot out there. I will go over some of the behind the scenes of the field trip admin side, like before the students get there. We will also go over what actually happens during a field trip, what that feels like for students, and some of the tips and tricks that we've learned. And we also have a wonderful resource sharing towards the end of the presentation. So hopefully you come with some ideas, and we can all chat about them. We will also have some time if you have some questions at the end. But throughout this presentation, we would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to raise a hand, drop a question in the chat, or you're totally welcome to come off mute. I know it can be a little intimidating, but we would love to hear from you because we want to learn from you too. You are all experts in what you do, and we'd love for this to be an open conversation. All right, let's go to the next one.
Thank you for emphasizing that, Megan. I also, as I kind of share a little bit more of our history of ESY Stockton, I know many of you guys are coming from busy days, so please take a moment here to either, stretch and take some deep breaths to ground yourself in, or if you need to get up and wiggle a little bit to energize yourselves, feel free to do that. This is an image from our farm. I think this was 2 springs ago. We had a double rainbow welcoming us and a class. So our inception started pre-COVID in Stockton, and most likely it was around a table, breaking bread with the founder of Edible Schoolyard, Alice Waters, and our then mayor, Michael Tubbs. They had a conversation which evolved with the times, as COVID was also, changing the game for so many, and education that we began to, with our field trips, quote, air quotes, weren't really field trips in the sense that they look like now. They were not out on our farm. They began actually with a school, and we went out there to work in their garden beds. And then a timely transition from another organization that held the lease at the farm that we currently have. Fuentes, they had some infrastructure already built in on a portion of the acreage, and we're kind of looking for new horizons. So the Edible Schoolyard took that lease. And yeah, we have now had thousands of students out on our farm for no-cost field trips in South Stockton. Okay, let's do next slide, please. All right, Russell, feel free to throw in your magic to show us where our train tracks is. This is an overview of our farm space. So it's 6 acres in the Port of Stockton, which is located in a very industrial area. We're surrounded by active train tracks that kind of cut through. There's roads, there's train tracks. At the end of the block, there's actually an on-ramp to a freeway. So we have a lot of outside noise that we have to, really kind of lean into, because kids love trains and it's also hard to communicate through. But there's also actually within earshot is the Stockton Police Department shooting range. So we can often hear gunshots during, programming. So this is all what makes our space unique, but it's also in a residential area. A lot of what you're seeing on either side of our farm are homes. So our farm also consists of production and educational sides. There's the largest yellow box, and that is about the majority of our programming goes on in that. So most of the slides that you'll see today are from our production or that educational side. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Russell. I will give just a bird's eye view of all the programming that we do, because we do quite a bit of different things. Our field trips are pretty much the bulk of our programming, but we are also a community garden. So we have about 32 plots with plot holders that come regularly to maintain them. They grow food for their families there. We also do community classes. Those are mainly at local libraries, and they're usually cooking classes. Um, we also have a CSA program. We have grown to about 130 bags a week, which is incredible. That is totally free to our community. So cars drive up once a week on Wednesday and they get a bag of free organic produce through that program. We also have 4 farm festivals a year, um, which have grown pretty substantially in almost just this past year. Jenny organizes those and she does a really great job. They're basically like farm parties. We've had music and vendors and cooking demonstrations, amongst a bunch of other fun activities. And those happen every year. So our community members really look forward to those. Let's go to the next one.
You guys, anybody local, you'll get the invite at the end of this. We got one more this year. Okay, so diving a little deeper into our field trip programming, farm visits offer students a variety of hands-on opportunities, and here's some bullets. For most of them, we definitely love including cooking, whether it's just a tasting and a demo, or they're more hands-on. Some kind of garden activity, planting, harvesting, feeding chickens, which has evolved over the last couple of years. Oftentimes, we're just saving scraps from school lunches or our cooking demonstrations, and kids still have a ball throwing things over the fence for them. And arts, crafts, things of this nature. We've done some poetry in the garden, some writing activities. This program is open to K through 12 students, but we also do adult groups and community groups. So the bulk of our day-to-day programming are field trips. Megan mentioned our CSAs happen every Wednesday. A couple of years ago, it was every other Wednesday. And we host at least 50 field trips per year on our farm. Next slide, please. Okay, the farm to fork experience. Students might harvest or sample seasonal produce from our farm, exploring new flavors, and making more informed nutritional choices. We really encourage students to be brave. If they don't like something, that's okay, then they know. And we also touch on language to convey that if we might not like something, that's totally fine. We kind of make a little game about it and have some dialogue around, well, how do we convey that in a way that may not hurt somebody's feeling? Because a lot of things go into preparing food, but we all have different taste buds, just like we all have different favorite colors. And so we want to make sure that it feels inclusive to share our true thoughts and feelings. And we don't want to prevent that from language like gross, that's disgusting. How do we reframe that to get our point across, or our views and opinions? So our farm is also located in an area with very few grocery stores, which means there are few to no options for fresh produce. So how can we also see students for maybe one day. So we don't have repeat students very often. A teacher or a group might come out, one season, maybe in the fall, and then try again and make it in the spring. So how can we make it impactful for them in just one visit? Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, so I will speak a little bit to field trip admin side before the kids get to the farm. Um, Please feel free if you have any thoughts or questions. Feel free to chime in. You can always drop something in the chat if you'd like. But this is an area where we're always learning, always growing. So I am always interested in hearing fresh ideas, what's worked for you. It helps me do my job, and I hope we can share some stuff that helps with your programming too. All right, let's go to the first slide. So, um, this has changed a little bit in the past year, but we're currently booking field trips from basically the beginning of the school year to the end. So it used to be we would just book out like for the fall season or for the spring season. But this year I have opened the calendar all the way out into June, basically. Um, that comes with its challenges. I'll speak a little bit about that in a second. But we do have slow seasons because in a couple slides you'll see some photos of what the farm actually looks like. There are pretty much no inside spaces. Everything is outside. So there is a slow season in the winter when it's just too cold and too rainy to have kids out there, as well as in the summer. We are in Stockton and it gets upwards of 110 in the summer, and that is way too hot to have anybody outside. So we do have a slow season, but it luckily aligns with the school calendar. Our busiest times are fall and spring. Um, we find a lot of the same teachers want to come back every year if they're able to. So I try my best to stay in regular contact with teachers. They are super busy, but I'll usually send them an email to remind them when dates open at the beginning of the season or the beginning of the year. Um, we don't just work with school groups, we also work with pretty diverse range of community groups. So we are always making connections, always asking groups to come out to the farm. And it's taken a while for us to build up these community connections. I think meet someone new probably every single day out there on the farm. And so it's taken us a long time to really build up these groups and to make those meaningful connections in the community. And it's really important. So you can touch lots of different groups. Yeah, I'm sure some of you um, are also still making connections. We have charter schools, homeschool groups, adult groups, special needs groups, bunch of different groups come out here. And it's good to stay in their inbox and to remind them when a good time to come out again is. Here's a photo of, this is just a field trip flyer that we use. If you're kind of looking for an example of that. Okay, next slide. So here is a screenshot of the form that I use and some of the questions that I ask when I'm scheduling groups to come out to the farm. Um, I don't want to get too in the weeds with like specifics about this because it's going to be different for each program. But some of the main things that we ask are what curriculum are students learning at school so we can make meaningful connections when they're out at the farm. What past experiences have they had if they've been out on a field trip before? We don't want them to have the exact same field trip that they've already had. So it's going to change seasonally and it's going to change each time that they come out to the farm. Of course, we always ask for any possible allergens, sensitivities, or access needs. Um, it's really important because we always cook a snack with them or provide them with a snack. And so it's just something that we need to know. Um, we also are pretty open to additional requests. So if a group says, we really liked learning about pollinators and we want to spend more time talking about bees, we'll say, great, we can do that. It's really helpful to be flexible with teachers and with students too. And they'll have a lot more meaningful experience if they're interested um, in what we're teaching them. Russell, I'll have you go ahead and drop the link to that form in the chat. I find it really helpful to look at examples of this. It does change pretty much every season. I'll give you an example. We had a group out, and by the normal lunchtime that they had, they were super, super hungry. And so now I added a question that just says, what time do your students normally have lunch? So we can avoid another situation where kids are super hungry when they're out on a field trip. Um, so just little things like that. I'm constantly tweaking it. Helpful to see an example if you want to. All right, let's go to the next one. Ooh, transportation. Okay, so I noticed quite a few comments when everyone filled out their pre-training survey. This is an area that is tricky for us sometimes. Um, Transportation requests can take 30 or 45 days plus to be approved. And it's quite a process for schools. They also have very limited funding to pay for buses because it's very expensive for schools to take field trips. I do not have all the answers to these questions, but I will share a couple things that we've done in the past. We have met with the Stockton Unified Transportation Department. And they now speed up requests to the Edible Schoolyard project. And they're actually contacting schools directly if we get a submission from them. So we were lucky that they were open to speeding the process along for schools. It hasn't always been this way. I won't go super into that. But it's always good to just have conversations with different groups. Another solution that we've had one group try was taking the public bus system to the stop that's nearest to the farm, and then the students walked over. Might be a more reliable option in areas with better public transport. But just another idea um, in case you're wondering, because it's something we've wondered too. We often, well, I feel like sometimes we can miss certain ages and certain groups because it's hard for them to take a field trip. One example is high school students. With just the way their periods are structured and their day is a little bit different than an elementary school day. It's hard to pull an entire class out and try to bring them on a field trip. So yeah, we have gone to schools in the past. I would prefer if schools came out to see us. But it is an option is travel field trips. If anybody has any ideas that they'd like to share, it seems like it's something um, that you all might have some issues with too. So I'd love to hear it. Feel free to drop it in the chat, or we can talk about it later. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's talk about what students experience when they come on one of our field trips. Let's go to the next one. So our field trips have, I would say, grown in size. They're not necessarily just one class that comes out anymore. Sometimes it is upwards like 2 to 3 classes, like a whole grade level. It can be easier for teachers to bring out bigger groups, so they're not like choosing one class in a grade to go on a field trip. But that has come with its challenges. These are some questions that we've asked ourselves when deciding whether or not to accept these bigger groups. How many students can we support at one time without our staff feeling overwhelmed? What level of spaciousness do we need or have to support these bigger groups? Um, how can we incorporate school staff and chaperones? That's an area I'd like to grow in, is incorporating additional hands that may be on the farm for the first time also. And yeah, just thinking about what do we need to deliver really impactful experiences to each student, even if they are coming in a bigger group. Um, if you are also thinking about growing your program in any type of way, I would love to hear about some of the things that you're struggling with or areas that you're looking to grow in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, you guys, here are some images of our learning learning spaces. The whole farm is kind of set up as a learning lab space. Even the photo behind Megan is actually from our north bed. Sorry, those are our greenhouse beds, and our greenhouse is in the back. So these are all learning spaces. But what you can maybe see is there's no walls. So our other than the greenhouse, but we don't spend a ton of time in there. We have taken refuge from some rain, but it gets hot. So our programming is completely outdoors with limited covering and shade. And as Megan mentioned, it can be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, for several days in a row. And it gets wet in the wintertime. So without walls, we have to have some considerations, and there are definitely some struggles to that. So what you can see in the image on the right is our classroom, and hay bales are our seats for our students. But we also encourage students to find other spaces at designated times to explore our farm further. We make sure that our gates are closed, and it's in completely enclosed area. The educational side is about 3 acres. And so kids have a lot of room to roam. And sometimes the teachers are the hardest ones to kind of convey that we really encourage running, and that they don't have to be in a line all the time. And students really love that freedom. So, yeah, we have adapted to support larger groups. Hay bales don't cut it all the time for, if we have 3 groups or 75 students, second graders take a lot less space on these hay bales than say eighth graders would. So breaking into different groups, and we'll get into that a little bit further too. But the gathering spaces on the left-hand photo, and you can kind of see it's lightly shaded, but not entirely. So next slide, please. Yeah, so here's some more images. You can see some of our students in their field trip on the left. And this storage space on the image on the right is actually the majority of the space that we have to keep all of our educational materials. And we face a lot of challenges with that, which include moisture and pests, limited space, and of course, all the elements accelerate the wear on our equipment. And yeah, just organizing as well can be really challenging in a space where we seem to keep acquiring new things and then day after day after a field trip resetting as well. So what challenges do you face with your educational spaces? Please drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear. We know everybody's space is unique and your programs are unique, but we would love to learn from you, so we can continue learning together in this. Russell, feel free to interject if we've got some questions that we want to address now.
Yeah, I mean, so Sheila asks, posted in the chat, how do you plan ahead of time what activities the students are going to do when they are on a field trip, considering the farm/garden may shift, and so a tight curriculum may change? And I know that this will probably be something this is going to be covered a little bit more in a few minutes, I think, but I think it's such a great question. So.
Great. Glad you asked. Yes, we will emphasize that here shortly, and the flexibility that we have to lean into. Great question. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so feel free to drop any of your comments in the chat around your spaces. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so there were some questions about engagement. This is kind of like when students first get there, we like to greet folks, no matter the age, at the gate before they even come onto our farm space. We know it's not always possible. There are groups that come out in staggered vehicles, but it is a really welcoming thing to be able to open the gateway and welcome them with our team. And so the image you see there is our team as of this week. And when our students come onto the farm, we generally go right to our classroom space so they can settle in. And we can give them the lay of the land. We also have them kind of observe things in transition from our gate to the classroom space, which is located about halfway through those 3 acres. They're passing community plots and, they're seeing flowers, hopefully, depending on the season. But we introduce ourselves first. So we like to welcome everybody, introduce ourselves and any farm friends that are available for our opening circle. That includes any of our fellows or our farm crew. Anybody that's working on the farm that day that is maybe not a community member working in their plot, and we'll generally wave to them too so they feel welcome, and kids can kind of warm up, like, seeing somebody else that they don't know in a new space too. So something I really like to do is introduce myself. Hi, everybody, I'm Jenny, or you can call me. And then I choose a bunch of different fun, edible nicknames that start with J. I don't tell them that. I ask them, I'm like, okay, you guys can call me jackfruit. You can call me jujube, and the list goes on. And so it helps them to remember my name, but it also starts a conversation from the very beginning. Okay, what do those things have in common? And of course, this is dependent on age. But it generally goes over. I have kids even at the grocery store that come over and like, hey, jackfruit, so it sticks. But it also offers them the opportunity to start thinking, oh, well, what could my farm name be? And okay, so they all have a "j" sound, but maybe there's something else that they have in common. We start talking about edible. Oh, well, what does edible mean? You're like, well, we're at the edible farm. What do you think we're going to do today? So it offers the opportunity to kind of open the door to dialogue around food, and being fun with it. So we ask a lot of questions. So we find that engagement happens. Who's been on the farm before? Who's been on our farm before? What are some of the things that will help keep us safe today? This is a great one. I imagine a lot of educators lead into this in their classroom settings as well, where sometimes students are stricter with the rules or guidelines that they share with each other than we would be. Students are like, no running. And we're like, actually, we encourage you at certain times in certain spaces, if you want to run or jump or walk like a chicken or, do a cartwheel over here, those things are encouraged. But they also recognize what will help keep them safe. And then we kind of fill in the blanks. And then what do you want to learn? This is a question that can help shape our day. And it might change the trajectory a little bit, and kind of goes with that great question that was just asked of, we have to remain flexible. We have the best intentions of sticking to our run of show, which you guys will see a slide with the example of our run of show, which we do for every field trip. But we also, want to explore the things that students are curious about. So we ask questions, especially what do you want to learn? We also settle into our space, kind of a little bit of what we did as we got in here and kind of settled in. If you need to take a deep breath, sometimes we'll do it all together. We're kind of reading the room. Some people need to just kind of ground themselves. You can almost feel like a buzz of energy of all the students are so excited. A lot of kids from COVID times have never been on a field trip in our community. And so this might be their first exposure to being on a bus with a bunch of their friends. And so that kind of takes over and they go a little haywire for a minute, right? So like regrouping and engaging. How do we take some deep breaths? Maybe we'll pause at the top and do them all together. Maybe do like a really loud release at the end. Sometimes we do some like silent excitement, like, do a really, big excitement, but without sound. Of course, dependent on age group. That doesn't go over the same in middle school. But generating ownership is also a big one. We've started utilizing safety captains and cleanup captains or cleanup crew, however you like to title that. And we have little pins, so we've just kind of written on it, safety captain, and who wants to volunteer to support today, and they may not even know what they're supporting, but we usually get some hands up and people still wanting to, support in some way. They have done the most beautiful job washing our forks than I've ever seen, very organized, they're very methodical, way more than we would be. So it just gives them some ownership of the day. Um, yeah, and we have hay bales. So kids love running on our hay bales. However, they are also what we use all year long for students to sit on. So safety captains could be as easy as, hey, can you help us monitor and remind folks not to run or jump on our hay bales? It could be that simple. And oftentimes it's the children that might be most inclined to do that themselves that are really good at it. Um, and we encourage courage. So we want them to be brave. I might even dare them to try something new that they maybe wouldn't on a different day, and let them know that it's okay if they don't like something, but simply trying something is showing great courage. And sometimes we ask them, like, who's feeling brave today? Who's excited to try something new today? Or who's willing to try something new today? So, and one other thing that we do is we have recalls. So when students get there, sometimes we'll say, good morning, and then depending, either they're just waking up and you might get a good morning. They're very quiet, they're still kind of shy. So then we'll increase the volume, I'll increase the volume, and then hopefully they follow, increase the volume. And then we also do that with edible. And when I say edible, you say schoolyard. So that's one way to recall. And then we try and see if we can be completely silent afterwards and share that that usually follows. Something is going to follow that we're trying to share with them. We also have a cowbell. And we utilize that a lot. We ring that so they can hear that from other areas of the farm after activities or after their lunch, so they know to come back to a certain space, or we're trying to get their attention for something. So to look up and come join us, or head to their next station. So let's go to the next slide, please.
So these are some of the lessons that we lean on for the field trips. Yeah, kind of hand in hand with the question that was asked. Sometimes we will plan for a lesson and we'll have a comment or to just not the right energy level, and we'll have to be flexible and adapt to what the group needs. But these are some of the ones that we have written and that we've used: plant and animal life cycles, seed and plant anatomy, food justice and nutrition, um, seasonality, and often we talk about farming organically. Um, the great thing about some of these lessons is that they can be scaled up or down depending on age group or seasonality. We t- they tend to be adaptable to different seasons. Like the one I'd say we use most regularly is our seed lesson, because there's usually seeds of some sort on the farm. But we can also talk about what comes before a seed or what comes after we plant a seed. So it's lessons like that that make it easily adaptable to whatever we're met with that day, and different uh, age levels too. Like with the seed lesson, for younger groups, we might just talk about what is a seed, what do seeds need to grow. Um, and with an older group, we might talk about, okay, well, what's inside a seed? We can talk about varieties, we can talk about a whole bunch of different things with just the same lesson. Um, so it's just that flexibility again. That's important. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, here's some more on engagement. So, yeah, we ask more questions. We let students show, teach, and share what they know. We ask them questions before telling something they might already know, and that helps us to engage them because they tend to tune out. I mean, I think maybe human nature is, I already know this. Um, so your lens of listening changes a little bit, especially in a new environment when there's so much stimulation and excitement, and you could just be chatting with your friend next to you about, whatever it may be. So games, we try to reframe things into games and build excitement around it. So games to us might be like an AKA a quiz. What do you know about seeds? But we're not going to say, okay, everybody, welcome to the farm. Let's take a quiz. We're going to say, okay, everybody, let's play a game. So leaning into that seed lesson that we have utilized so frequently. Um, with a lot of engagement, we might play seed or no seed, and we might have a variety of items out on the table. And we may even start with, okay, what do you know about seeds? Why are they important? What is a seed? How do seeds travel? Which is a very fun conversation for all ages. And then having all of these items out, we might do rounds. And if they're older, even if they're younger, it's just kind of fun to throw out some arbitrary points. So I might unveil a jar of beans, seed or no seed, and it's as simple as thumbs up, seed, or no seed, thumbs down, or a carrot. Or an apple, and you don't even have to cut these things open to actually see the seed. Or if you just have an image of an item, because seasonality can be a thing here, but also just hold in your brain the idea of an image of a carrot. Are there any seeds there? Seed or no seed. So if you said no seed, give yourself 17 points, and then you move on to the next item. So they're just kind of having fun with this game, and you're just kind of priming them for the conversation to come, to increase engagement. So as we share these areas of the lesson not covered, we might pull a fun fact card. And these are some things that we used to lean into quite a lot, where we would walk around and like talk about, okay, over here we've got our chickens. Like, who knows? How do we approach a chicken? Do we run up to it, or do we walk up slowly and talk gently? And so then we might pull a fun fact card and like, oh, did you know chickens are related to dinosaurs, ancestors? So we kind of have conversations that might stimulate their interest in other ways, and to reel them into the lesson, whatever might be going on or whatever we're focused in on. Also, engagement, we find a lot more. Um, it improves with smaller group sizes, so stations and shorter blocks of time, so they have more hands-on opportunities. These are a couple images. This little gal picked up a bunch of beets. They had a harvest station, but I think a few days before we had a field trip where we had same grade, quite young, trying to put on their gloves and get in there as a whole class and trying to harvest beets. And even just putting gloves on 30 students, in 20 minutes is a hard time frame to stick to. So separating them to give them more engagement time, more opportunity to get involved with whatever they're doing. Yeah, also encouraging them, just noting the things, as we're asking questions, they're telling us information that they already know, and encouraging them by like, what a great answer. Or, wow, you're hypothesizing like a scientist, or you're using those big, beautiful brains, whatever the things are that you want to encourage. And even if it's a question that you're asking and it might not be the right answer, it's like, wow, thanks for participating, so that they're getting encouraged just to participate, can be very helpful. So, one other thing that has been really fun for us in the past was harvesting the beets. Okay, like let's investigate what on the outside of this plant, this root, would maybe tell us what the color of the inside might be. And so we're maybe at a cutting board and we're ready to chop it open. We have gotten cheers from large groups of students as we unveil the colors and the different varieties, because they're so unique and some of them don't really show their true colors on the outside. So that's a really fun one, the unveiling. Okay, next slide.
Thanks for that, Jenny. So with a lot of those activities, we've had to figure out how to adapt a day to a really large group of students sometimes. Um, yeah, we have like upwards of 75 kids out there at once, some days. So one of the things that's really helped is splitting them up into groups and having them rotate around the farm into these stations. Usually they'll have a snack station, a farm exploration, or like a scavenger hunt for them to explore the space. We try to include an art activity. They've done a few different ones in the past. We've done um, leaf tracing, we've done stamping. They always really, really enjoy that. This photo is actually from yesterday. We had a group out and they were able to get their hands dirty and help us plant some late season spaghetti squash. And they were actually a big help. They ended up planting an entire long row, basically, of these spaghetti squash. So this is oftentimes their favorite part of the field trip, is actually getting to be hands-on in the dirt or pulling weeds. And it's a big help to our farm team as well. So just thinking about how we can incorporate the students into day-to-day farm tasks. It might feel kind of mundane to our farm team because they do it every day, but these kids may have never planted something in the soil before. So just remember that it's going to be new to a lot of the kids. Um, we yeah, we'll rotate through these stations. And we really encourage a food forward day. So like during their farm exploration, they are sampling whatever's in season. Right now it's pomegranates and jujubes, which are ready. And they love like just going up to a tree and being able to pick something and just eat it right off the tree. It's a new experience for a lot of them. Um, and yeah, so these rotations have worked really, really well. We do remain flexible because with different group sizes and different seasons, they've always got to change a little bit. Um, but it does give students some options of do they want to do one station or not do the other. And it gives them some autonomy over their day. We're not just like herding them around the farm. They are able to choose what their day looks like. And so these rotations have been a big help in breaking up those really large groups and helping them feel manageable for our staff too, because it can get pretty overwhelming fast when you have 75 kids all running around. So these have been a big help. Let's see. Okay, next slide.
Okay, Megan touched on this a bit, but food and freedom on our farm go hand in hand. However, we are not equipped on our farm or for our team to prepare lunch currently. So we do let the schools or groups know that we have space for them to enjoy lunches and that we do provide snacks. However, the lunch is their responsibility to bring, and they have spaces they can utilize to lay out or have tables. So those are brought from home or from their school. And we really try to remember to set the tone before lunch because they have often students are eating inside, and their free time or recess time before or after that is kind of limited and quite structured. And so we let them know, hey, you're gonna have 45 to 55 minutes between your lunch and your free time. So use it wisely. Don't rush through your food, even if you just had a snack. We want you to continue exploring the farm. If you so choose, we would love to see you play games. We'll set out games after maybe 20 minutes so they don't see the games right when they sit down to lunch and they just like eat a little bit and, store the rest. Um, we also want to show them where they can leave any food waste. So we'll often set out bowls that they can share with the chickens after at the end of the day. And then also what to listen for and where they're going to head after. So it might be you're going to listen for the cowbell. And then you've got 2 minutes, you've got 5 minutes to do cleanup. Because if we've got games out, we need your help. And then where they're going to come after that second cowbell. It's usually our classroom. And yeah, listening for cleanup instructions and where they'll meet so that they have the tone is set for them and they can have a great time knowing what's off limits. We might say, hey guys, we went in the greenhouse already today. So that's going to be off limits for the rest of this field trip. You can peek inside, but no feed inside, kind of thing. So, and we really lean into spaciousness for our students on the farm. This has been a big shift for us this year too. Actually, last fall, we kind of made that shift, no, spring, where we recognize trying to do stations in the beginning after an introduction to the farm, and maybe doing explorations and then having lunch after a snack and demonstration, then to just try and bring them back quickly for another lesson and then a closing circle was trying to do too much. So we opened up the last portion of their day for this extra freedom. They get so much curriculum in school. They often don't get a ton of green space time allotted to them. And we've found as we kind of will we'll circle back to our closing circle, but oftentimes students share that that's their favorite part of the day, that they got to hang out with their friend or bond over under the trees or, read to the pumpkins or chickens or whatever it may be, because they don't often get that choice. We've had students just like just so excited and so energized. They're like, I don't understand. I don't know why I'm so happy, and they're out there in the screen space that they maybe don't get very frequently. So we really lean into that spaciousness on our farm, and the lunch period and the afterwards is when we tend to do that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and here's some of our tools. I guess I didn't mention, but in the slide prior to, there was a sorting station, which is as simple as beans and seeds and measuring cups, or even we used to use egg crates. There's a muffin tin that we use now, but it's a very meditative practice and it's a very simple tool. All ages really enjoy this, where they'll just be there forever, seeing measuring spoons or cups that maybe they don't get to utilize in their homes, but maybe they've seen them, the adults using them. It's a very simple activity, but magnifying glasses are one that we lean into a lot. How do you use them? What are these? What do they do? And we'll often let the students take those around the farm as we explore. If we're looking during our exploration station, we might be looking for items with seeds. Or we're looking for different parts of a plant, which parts have fuzzy things, so we're asking questions prior to, almost like a scavenger hunt, with a theme in mind. Books, we've had books exchanges at our festivals, and we've held on to some books that feel appropriate. We've had other organizations donate garden books for all ages, and just setting some of those out have been so helpful. And we really enjoy watching the students just pick one up and find a green spot to go enjoy. Art supplies, of course, is a great free time and choice. Chalkboards and clipboards have been invaluable for us to utilize again and again for all types of activities. And there's, yeah, some of these images, there's some kids just tracing for art projects. This is a great time and a great season. We harvested a whole basket of leaves and flowers and stalks, blades of grass, and this was a great activity that we just did this past week too. Yeah, would love to hear if you guys have any tools that you love in the chat. Feel free to share those too. Let's move on to the next slide.
So after a really fun, long day, students can be really, really excited, very wiggly, and they're about to get back on a bus. So when we have our closing circle, it's a nice opportunity to come back, bring the energy level back down before they get on the bus, and just have some reflection on their day, like even before they get back to school. We will have them reflect on some of their favorite experiences or something that they've learned. And not all students want to share, um, but some are super excited to tell us their favorite part of the day. It's usually chickens. But often, sometimes I'm surprised by things that they say. Like, we've had quite a few students just say, like, I never get to have free time. That was my favorite part of the day. And so it's nice, like, immediate feedback for us too, of like what was really an impactful moment in their day that they want to share with us. We will often do just some deep breaths if we're feeling super, super energetic. That tends to help a lot. We always remember to invite them out again to the farm. Um, our farm is usually closed to the public, so we don't want anybody to tell mom and dad, oh, we should just go check it out. We like to give them days that they can do so, like at our farm festivals or any upcoming volunteer days. So we usually share those. We also like to give them an opportunity to help clean and beautify the farm before they leave it. Um, it's just as simple as saying, okay, we're going to take 3 minutes and pick up every piece of trash that we can find. Jenny has done a really great job of talking to them about leave no trace practices. Um, and it's important for them to take ownership over a space that they've used all day. And with 75 hands, usually cleanup goes pretty quick. So it's a big help for us as well. Um, and we always like to give teachers and students just a photo op opportunity so they can remember the day they've had out on the farm. Um, yeah, so that's how our closing circle usually goes. We do switch it up sometimes, like depending on how excited they are, or I think this image here is we will often stand with some sliced fruit, or I think we've done like beets and stuff like that. And they get one final um, bite before they leave the farm. We call it a mindful moment. So they'll sit with their piece of fruit or whatever it may be, and not immediately eat it, but sit with it, observe things about the texture, the smell, does it sound like anything? And that helps bring the energy levels down too, just because they're focusing in on something, before they taste it. And a lot of them get the opportunity to try maybe a fruit that they've never tried, like jujubes and pomegranates, depending on what's seasonally available. Okay, next slide.
Okay, here's some of our planning resources. So questions about how do we schedule things out? The image on the left here is actually a run of show. So the who, what, where, when of each field trip. So we do these for each of them. It gives us the time that we start, even before the students show up. How much time will we need for setup? What tools? Who's leading that? Where is it going to be? Which items might we need to pull out? And then for the timeline, we kind of, okay, who's got the lead in this? Which bullet points are we going to touch on? And then a little bit more about the lesson. Oftentimes we'll even have a lesson plan hyperlinked into these, whether it's an art activity or portions of another general lesson, whether it's seeds, we've referenced that one quite a bit. And then closing circle, of course, even if the group is small, we had a homeschool group out yesterday that we had 6 students, 10 students. And some of them were really young. I think I saw a question about the age groups. I think the youngest was still in a stroller. It was 3 families, and we had seen them last season also. So they had a lot of fun. Like, I'm bigger, the plants are bigger, so they got to see some of the differences and they were growing with the seasons and time. And so, yeah, but we also might change based on their energy, their needs, or what their interests might be. Even though they were a small group, we spent more time planting because they were really into it, and our team was really into it because they did such a great job following instructions, better than some of our older groups for sure. It's like very minute details. So we let them roll with that a little bit longer. So our closing circle wasn't as long. So we just kind of rolled with it, remain flexible. The other resource on this page is a no kitchen, no problem worksheet, really. So if you're building a program out or kind of in a revision or reviewing of your programming or want to include edible education, this is a great resource. And it prompts some questions as to, what size you're going to be cooking with, for example. So, you may not need 12 cutting boards for 12 students, could you share and could that be doubled? So, or could 2 students use a single cutting board at a time? Those are some of the pieces, and these, I think this was generated a couple of years ago. So they're still roughly within the same ballpark as far as pricing goes. And so that could be a helpful resource for program planning. Okay, next question, please. Slide. That's what I meant. Okay, and remaining flexible, you've kind of heard us weave this through every aspect of this. We're working with kids, we're working in outdoor spaces. We also just want to make sure that we also lean into what the students want to learn and know. So we've had to reroute a whole semester of our programming because transportation quickly came to a halt with, some unexpected information. And so we had to adapt and go out to the schools for a full semester. So there's a group of students here in their classroom. So we had to adapt to their environment versus them on a daily basis and having to do that on our farm. Of course, we love to incorporate the green space, but we'll do what we can and what we need to get that information out there. And they had a ball. They don't know any different. They haven't been on the farm before. So, and then, not all conversations that might seem disruptive are really as they seem. They might be sitting next to a student and needs translation. We have a lot of English as second language learners. And so, taking that into consideration, slowing down a bit, checking in with the student that's translating too, because they're doing double duty. So it's a really great reminder. They also just might be really excited. It might be their first field trip. So this other photo is actually a student that took it upon himself during his free time to come help and ask questions. We were pulling snap peas, and we were counting through the sunlight how many peas were in each of these. And he had a lot of great questions. He may not have been that engaged during the lesson we were giving with a large group, but it's just a great reminder that each student learns and grows, at their own pace too. So leaning into that flexibility. Okay, next slide. Let's do this.
Awesome. I'm happy to prompt this if that sounds good to y'all, Megan and Jenny. Cool. Yeah. So at this point in the presentation, we'd love to offer a method of cross-sharing your experiences and knowledge around farm field trips. And one way that we love to do that usually with our virtual training events, workshops, is through this service called Padlet. And essentially, I'll post the link in the chat. And Padlet is essentially a shared posting board where you can post ideas and responses to prompts. And so I'm actually going to stop sharing the presentation momentarily, and we'll pull up this Padlet that I've just shared just to quickly demonstrate how to utilize it. So, um, yeah, so here's our Padlet. And farm field trip inspiration board. We've provided these 5 prompts for your consideration. What's one transportation opportunity or idea you're excited to try in the future? What is an important coordinating question you have before bringing students on a field trip? What's one way you've found to engage students? What questions do you ask first-time visitors? How do you adapt programming to different needs or ages? And then are there any general resources you'd like to share? And so to engage with this, what you do is simply click on one of these plus bubbles, another little bubble will come up, and you can type in your response. I'll just type in test for now. You can press publish. And then Padlet actually provides this chance for you to change your name. It automatically gives you sort of a, kind of a fun little name. Right now, I guess I'm Whimsical Oyster. So I'll change my name to Russell and put my name, Edibles, my organization where I'm coming from. Click done. And then my response post is there with my name attached. So that's how to engage with Padlet. I'll delete that post. I'll stop sharing this screen. I'll pull back up the presentation. And I wonder, Jenny and Megan, if it feels good to invite folks to work on, feel free to work on that Padlet in the background. And in the meantime, I know there was chats, there was some questions in the chat. I'd love, since we're here and now with everyone, I'd love to give as much time as possible for sort of open Q&A actually. So maybe people could kind of pick their own adventure of posting on the Padlet, chiming into the Q&A or asking a question, kind of having a free-flowing conversation. And the Padlet will be kind of an open resource for coming back to anytime you have a moment. And so.
That sounds great. Yeah, if you guys want to utilize the Padlet now, feel free to. Otherwise, feel free to utilize that, after this or in the coming days and ask away. We'd love to connect with you now.
Yeah, I saw a couple of chat notifications. I'm wondering if there's any questions in there, Russell?
Yeah, so Sheila asks, how do you prepare your team for the activities of the day? What tools do you utilize so that everyone is on the same page? And this is a moment also where folks freely feel free to come off of mute and we can just have a real-time conversation here.
Hi, Russell. I'm Shayla. I can
Oh,
give a little
Shayla.
more context to why I asked that question. I'm an agriculture and market programs manager at a museum and garden, and so oftentimes, well, our agriculture team is myself who is designing and leading the curriculum, and then I have a urban agriculturalist who does like the hands-on planting. And so when we're inviting students, classrooms to come to our sort of pilot farm, we are pulling in our learning program facilitators who are not experts in agriculture or planting and things like that. And so I always do encourage them that they don't have to be an expert, just like an expert in leading the curiosity of what we're doing. And so they can refer to what we have. And so that's sort of why I asked, which you shared your planning resource document, which is really sort of, affirming to know that because every season we're going into a new season and I'm like, what am I doing? I sort of like a small panic attack. And so it's just sort of reaffirming to hear everything you're saying, because it just reaffirms that we're doing what we can, we're doing the best that we can. And so I just asked that question of how do you prepare your team for the activities of the day? If like you have specific tasks, do you meet like monthly or weekly or daily to sort of like identify what those tasks are on the farm that the students are going to be participating in?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thank you for the extra context, Sheila. Our farm manager is very flexible, Tanya. So um she's on the farm with us most days as well. And so oftentimes there's tasks going on that they may need support with. So it might be a benefit for them to actually have some resources. Sometimes it takes a little bit more to, teach the students that they're trying to do this work, whether it's, planting a row of spaghetti squash or pulling up all the Bermuda grass in a whole bed that they're ready to turn over. So we kind of do those things. We have a new standing call. Is it monthly now, Megan, that we have with Tanya to kind of walk through the farm?
Yeah, we try to circle up with our team about once a month, just so we're all on the same page. We know what's going to be growing, what are some rough farm tasks that are going to need to be done that month. But yeah, it can be difficult with like different levels of experience working on the farm or working with kids. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just like you said, like as long as they're comfortable leading curiosity, the kids are gonna have a great experience. Jenny and I are not experts on farming. I often don't have, you know, answers to questions that a lot of them will pose. But it's just another opportunity, like it's effective just to learn alongside them. Sometimes it's like, hey, I don't know the answer to that question. Um, let's find out together, kind of thing. Anything to add on that, Jenny? I know I lean into that a lot because, yeah, I'm not an expert.
Not an expert, also just, praising them for their questions. Like, oh, that's a great observation. We're looking at melons, the inside of melons at a community class at a library, and the students like, well, I'm noticing that this watermelon has seeds all over, but this type of melon has seeds in the middle, and it's like, well, in my brain, I can convey why I believe that is, but I don't have a book to confirm that, and my background is in outdoor education and recreation. And so farming is, not my strongest suit. So we can go and seek that information elsewhere or praise them for like great observations, We don't have to necessarily give them all the answers too, or share some spaces where they can look those up. Like, well, that would be a really great project. What kind of, schoolwork do you have coming up for that you can use that and dive in deeper? The other thing too is I really want to share in the beginning of the transitions for us for lessons and new school years. I also get quite anxious about delivering new content, especially because we're generally training new team members or fellows that are new to our team. But one thing we really do is ask that they lead in with their passions so we can utilize those. Maybe they're really into music and we can help interweave that that we don't currently have on a daily basis, but also shadowing, just, watching us and then making it their own so that they feel comfortable, that they don't need to take, notes and do flashcards. And sometimes, like in the past, when I was first starting, I created kind of my own document because a lot of our programming was kind of created not the day of, but it was more, I needed more structure. And so I created some things that I could utilize that made my map of the day. Even if it didn't turn out that way, it was like I feel better going in with some structure, but really shadowing and having your new team members shadow the verbiage and walk through so they can communicate things effectively when they need to, whether it's on their own or in tandem with somebody else.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
So Karen just posted a question in the chat. I'll read it out. I have a deep interest in this subject, but I lead residencies and workshops in classrooms, often with ecological and sustainability projects. I also teach professional development sessions for educators. Often I find the adults in the room are negative toward insects, etc., more so than the students. Since the pandemic, kids just haven't been exposed to nature and teachers haven't been able to make up for this loss. Do you teach professional development to teachers? And if so, what's most needed and most enjoyed? Thank you.
Wow. Thanks for doing that great work. And also calling that out because it is something that we do see an adverse reaction to bugs, insects, and we have a lot of ants on our farms, on our farm, in all areas. And, more than we'd like in certain spaces. However, we really try and lean into the fact that each of these creatures has a really important job. So let's observe what they're doing and let's, we can use a magnifying glass or we can just try and use our finger to just kind of watch where they're going. And it's an opportunity to talk about cleaning up. I mean, this is kind of zooming out too. But we just try and lean into what they're doing and what they're providing and how they're this part of this interconnectedness. What if all the trash and food and waste that we've ever produced was not decayed? It hasn't decayed. What if it wasn't broken down by these really important creatures doing really important work? What would our world look like? What would our world smell like? So kind of leaning into some uh, different areas that they maybe haven't considered, whether it's teachers too. Megan, you have anything you want to add to those?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Often not just with bugs, but like sometimes it's the adults who when we eat something green, they're the first to go, "Oh, I would never eat that. I would never ever try that." And it's like it's it's difficult with adults. I think one of the most important things is just we are setting a good, strong example of things that, might have a negative reaction to. Um, and yeah, bugs are a great example. Vegetables are another one. Yeah, it's just about slowly changing the behaviors of students and also the adults that are so influential over them. We haven't done too much with teachers. That's kind of an area we've talked about. We've had a couple groups want to come out to do some teacher training, but we haven't, I don't think, hosted anything yet. Um, yeah, that's an area I would be interested to hear about, maybe from you even. It's like how that has gone. Because yeah, it starts with teachers about how kids feel about the outdoors and how they feel about insects and vegetables. So it's an important place to start for sure.
Yeah, great question, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, and thank you, Jenny and Megan. And picking, one thought this question also prompts for me is maybe if you, Megan and Jenny, could speak a little bit to kind of how you set expectations with the teachers before this classes
Mm.
come. I think you maybe touched on this a little bit during the presentation, but like for me, this question, brings up to me like how do you, yeah, how do you lay the foundation when communicating with the teachers what they can expect their class to experience and what sort of like asks maybe or what sort of like what sort of framing do you provide for the teachers before they bring students so that they can like most easily like kind of transition themselves into the space? So sort of like the example you mentioned earlier was like, oftentimes there's like a no running rule at school, but on the farm, it's encouraged. It's fairly encouraged. So maybe is there a little bit of like of you could speak to that about like setting, framing, kind of pre-framing the experience for the teachers so that it's kind of like there's sort of alignment, you know, when they come out.
Sure. Megan, do you want to speak to this? I feel like you do a really great job with this.
Sure. Yeah. That is an area that I did feel like needed more communication. There is a letter that we send out. I'm happy to link it if anyone's curious. But it has language in there that encourages the ESY values. So like when students come to the farm, we want them to play, we want them to rest, we want them to be able to run. Um, and it is a little bit difficult to have to really pass that on to teachers because they're so busy. Oftentimes they don't, read through an entire email. Um, and they're probably maybe not going to open a document that I send them. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is when they get to the farm, um, oftentimes I'll pull aside the teachers and chaperones, like if Jenny's doing the opening circle, we'll pull them aside and just set the tone of you can be, somewhat hands off. We have plenty of staff here, and we want the students to have that level of freedom during the day. Um, it sometimes takes multiple reminders because, yeah, their class is a reflection of them. And of course, yeah, it's different with every group. Some teachers are like, we want to see everybody in rows. And so like throughout the day even, we will nicely remind them like, hey, it's okay if, we just ask them to run there, not walk. Um, so yeah, it's setting the tone both before through just the initial communications. I'll send that letter, and then throughout the day with just gentle reminders of, hey, this is a really exciting day for them, and we want them to enjoy. We want them to. A lot of times we'll say we're tiring them out for you, so let them run, let them do what they need to do, and we'll give them back to you tired on the bus. But great question, Russell. Yeah, it's something we're kind of growing with too, is how to communicate that best.
Thanks. No, thank you both. That sounds really that's really great that you kind of have a special little like huddle sidebar a little bit with the adults who are bringing and just sort of like kind of create a little bit of like alignment as well as communicate that earlier too. So Karen posted, I'll read out. Thank you all. I often start a class with kids and adults by asking what they ate for breakfast and bring it around to the importance of pollination for us to have most of our food in the world, linking insects with every one of our meals. But love the idea of talking about decay, waste, smell, etc. Kids will never forget that convo.
We find it quite memorable too. And thank you too, because we do have an opportunity coming up to talk with all the STEM teachers in our area, and they aren't able to come out to our farm, but it is still, you're reminding me how wild it is to get out there just to maybe talk about bugs, and like, why is this important? Or exactly the conversation that we're having now, that their reaction is impressionable, and they all know that. But it's a great reminder to have, that kind of dialogue too. So thank you for that reminder.
Megan,
Yeah.
I would definitely be interested in that document you sent because I think that is something that I experience as well. It's like, well, we're encouraging the students to behave a certain way that's acceptable, but this educators often like reprimand that behavior.
Right.
And so how do we have those conversations is definitely incredibly relevant. But one thing that came to my mind was, sorry, my cat is scratching up the wall and distracting me. My thought was, have you ever had sort of educators follow up at the end of a field trip, like asking questions about how they might have a garden space in their own gardens or like some resources that they might implement beyond your farm, and what does that look like? What resources do you provide, or how do you continue that relationship with them if they're interested in continuing a garden space in their space?
That's a great question. I think I can share this with you. Yeah, I will share our letter that we send to educators here in the chat. Um, Might be helpful to look at some of that language in there. I send that out to the teachers so they can glance at it before they get there. Um, your question was follow-up resources. Um, this is something we've talked about. Is I have gotten that question quite a bit, is like, we want to start a school garden, or we want to follow up with lessons around this. Um, and I usually direct them towards our wonderful ESY site. There is quite a bit of great information on there, especially for educators. There is lots of follow-up lessons on there, as well as resources to do like garden-based lessons. Um, do you have any place that you direct teachers, Jenny? There's quite a few like different organizations that do a great job that I'll sometimes share. Um,
Yeah, this is an area for growth for us too, because we actually used to do a community of practice where it was part of our programming where teachers could, it was with the County Office of Education in San Joaquin County, where Stockton is located, to apply and be part of a cohort for the year. And so teachers would come out, and I think it was once a month they had classes, and it would be either on the farm or it was at their county office of ed building, but each one had a different topic. And at the end, I think the county offered a stipend to help start their garden, and like Vitamix through and a Vitamix blender for edible education and things like that. I remember going there to demo how to do inclusive cooking demonstrations for groups. So there are maybe county resources to look into. We do get a lot of people just asking like, hey, can you come out to our school and build our garden bed? And while that sounds really fun, it's we've got a lot of space. So I think Life Lab is another great option. And the food literacy program, they're located in Sacramento. I think they've got a really great program too. But it is something that we can build out further to share out as well.
And I can chime in that many of our lessons on edibleschoolyard.org, the resource library, all resources are free. And much of the curriculum is there's a lot of curriculum, a lot of lessons that are designed so that it's like exploring food concepts and like food systems issues without necessarily needing to be in like have access to a garden or a kitchen space necessarily. Obviously, that's a great resource if it is available and whenever it's available, but there's, you know, there's definitely resources and lessons that can kind of carry that momentum of a farm field trip into like deeper, more continued explorations of like food, our connection to food. And so that's an additional possibility just to came to mind. So, and I can share that out, share some of those, like share how to access that curriculum in the follow-up email. Any other, we maybe have time for one more question. We're at a little bit over time, like the advertised time of the workshop, but if Jenny, I don't know if there's anyone who wants with any last questions for now, but we can definitely stay in touch and be available afterwards too.
Yeah, Russell, if you want to share out my email or and Jenny's email, I'm happy to keep this conversation going. With any questions you might have, or if you want to see any of our resources, I'm happy to share them. It always helps me to see what other people are doing. So hopefully you can keep these connections.
Yes, emails are in the chat. I also just want to say thank you guys so much for being a part of the conversation today, and just how much gratitude we have for being in this work with you, because it takes a lot of effort, and there's always more to learn. And so the fact that we're here wanting to share you as, you know, a group with each other all over the world is really special. So thanks for being in such meaningful work with us.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I wish we could chat for longer because I want to pick your brains about your programs and all the amazing work that I know you're all doing out there in the world. But for now, thank you very much for joining our workshop. Let's see, we have our Instagram linked at the bottom. That is where we post most of our content and farm updates. So if you want to follow us there, that's a great way to stay connected.
Yes, and you're all invited, whether it's, you know, a flight or a quick drive to our farm festival. It's our final one of the school year, or the calendar year, rather, the 18th of October. So it's Saturday from 10 to 1 Pacific Standard Time. You can find the info on our Instagram. We have a Facebook page as well, but please stay connected. You have our emails. We'd love to hear from you. Please use the Padlet. I know what you'll see a survey coming out from Russell. So if you don't have time to do that today, we look forward to your feedback and we can continue to learn with you beyond this dialogue today. Thank you again.